The night refused to sleep over Ravenhold. Wind crept through the ancient stone like a restless spirit, whispering against towers that had stood through forgotten wars. Torches burned low along the battlements, their flames bending as if bowing to something unseen. The fortress was awake, not with noise, but with tension. Lord Aldric Stormborn stood at the edge of the northern wall, staring into the darkness beyond the valley. The land below lay quiet, villages hidden beneath shadows, unaware that decisions made before sunrise could change their future forever. He had not slept. Sleep belonged to men who believed tomorrow was promised. Behind him, the soft scrape of boots broke the silence. "You're wearing the night down," a familiar voice said. Aldric did not turn. "The night wears me down first." Edrin Vale stepped beside him. Older now, his hair silvered by years of loyalty and regret. He had advised Aldric's father once, long before betrayal took everything. "The council meets at first light," Edrin said. "They argue already.
Some want peace.
Some want vengeance." Aldric's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. "Peace with whom?" Edrin hesitated. "With a queen who took your father's head." Aldric finally turned, his expression calm but hollow. "Then they misunderstand peace." Thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Edrin lowered his voice. "The people will follow you, Aldric, but the cost will be heavy." Aldric breathed in the cold air. "The cost was paid the day my father died." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind filled the space between them, carrying the smell of rain and iron. Far away, unseen by either man, a rider pushed his horse harder through the forest road, carrying a sealed message marked with the golden sigil of Valenreach, and in that message was the beginning of a war that could no longer be stopped. Morning came slowly, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise over Ravenhold. Gray light spilled across the courtyard where soldiers trained in silence, their movement sharp but restrained. No one laughed. No one spoke louder than necessary. News traveled faster than orders, and everyone felt it coming. Inside the great hall, the council gathered around the long oak table scarred by decades of arguments and broken promises. Lords and commanders took their seats, faces tight with unease. At the head of the table sat Aldric Stormborn, his posture steady, his expression unreadable. The doors closed. Edrin Vale spoke first. "Scouts report movement along the southern road. Valenreach is not preparing for peace." A murmur spread through the room. Lord Heron of the East slammed his palm on the table. "Then we strike first, while they still think us weak, and start a war we may not finish," another lord replied. Aldric listened without interruption. He watched their faces, noting who spoke with anger and who spoke with fear. Both could be dangerous. When the voices grew too loud, Aldric raised his hand. Silence followed. "My father trusted words," he said calmly. "He died for them. I will not." The council exchanged uneasy glances. "We will not march today," Aldric continued. "But we will prepare as if tomorrow is our last day of peace." Some nodded. Others looked disappointed. Outside the hall, unseen by the council, Sir Malrek moved through the corridors with purpose. His armor gleamed, freshly polished, his steps confident. He paused beside a narrow window and glanced toward the inner keep, his hand tightened around the scroll hidden beneath his cloak. By midday, clouds had gathered thick and heavy above Ravenhold. The air felt charged. Waiting, I and the training yard, Lyanna Frostvale watched the guards drill. She noticed small things others ignored. A soldier arriving late, another avoiding her gaze. Patterns that did not belong. She turned sharply as a young guard approached. "Commander," he said quietly, "the armory count is short. 3 swords unaccounted for." Lyanna's jaw tightened. "Lock the gates," she ordered. Quietly. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Lyanna looked toward the keep, unease settling deep in her chest. Something was already moving within the walls. The rain fell harder, turning the cobblestones of Ravenhold into slick paths that reflected the gray sky above. Shadows moved faster than the eye could follow, and whispers traveled where words could not. I and the dungeons below the great hall. Aldric remained seated, chains loose around his wrists, but heavy in meaning. The cold stone pressed against his back, yet he did not shiver. Every moment of stillness was an opportunity to observe, to plan, to listen. Lyanna entered quietly, her boots silent against the damp floor. "They've taken the captain of the guard," she said, her voice low but steady. "Malrek's men were loyal only to fear. That fear is gone." Aldric nodded slowly. "Good. That means we can turn their absence into an advantage." She frowned. "If the Iron Clans arrive, they will find the city poorly defended. Even a boy like me knows that." "You are no boy," Aldric replied. "And neither am I a child to be caged." He leaned forward, eyes glinting in the torchlight. "The walls hold, but the minds of men hold more. We use both." Far above them, on the ramparts, the wind carried the distant sound of oars striking water. Ships appeared, dark shapes against the morning mist. The Iron Clans had begun their journey across the northern waters, their banners snapping like the tongues of wolves. Lyanna's hand rested on the hilt of her sword. "They move faster than I expected." Aldric's gaze did not waver. "Good. Let them. The longer they think they have time, the more confident they grow. And confidence makes mistakes." Below, in the dungeons, a rat scurried across the stones, disappearing into the darkness. Outside, the storm grew, the clouds pressing closer to Ravenhold as if the sky itself prepared for the coming conflict. And in that quiet, charged moment, Aldric realized that the first move had already been made, not by swords, but by patience, by observation, by knowing exactly when to strike. The game was no longer about survival. It was about strategy. And Aldric intended to win. The first light of morning broke through the clouds, streaking the valley with pale gold. Ravenhold appeared calm from a distance, but inside the walls, tension thickened the air like smoke. In the war room, Aldric and Edrin pored over maps spread across a massive oak table. Lines of ink-marked roads, rivers, and settlements. Small tokens represented soldiers, wagons, and fortifications. Every movement mattered. Every decision carried weight. "The southern road is still unguarded," Edrin said, pointing to a narrow pass. "If Valenreach send their riders, they could reach us before the council even knows." Aldric's fingers hovered over the map, tracing the path with precision. "Then we set the trap. They will expect brute force, but we offer cunning instead." Outside the council chamber, Lyanna moved swiftly through the corridors, checking the armory, counting guards, and watching for anything unusual. Every glance, every pause told her more than words could. Something was off, and she felt it deep in her bones. The cliffside, the Iron Clans sailed steadily, their ships cutting through the mist. Freya Blacktide stood at the prow of the lead vessel, wind whipping her hair, her eyes scanning the horizon. She had heard rumors of Ravenhold's strength, but her people trusted only steel and strategy. "Keep formation," she shouted.
"No mistakes."
"The Stormborn seeks allies, but we choose our own path." Back in Ravenhold, the first message arrived from the outer scouts, small groups of riders approaching from the south. The council erupted in whispers and hurried steps. Lords argued, commanders shouted, and some merely stared at the maps in disbelief. Aldric remained silent, letting the noise wash over him. He knew fear could be louder than any command, but resolve would outlast both. As the sun climbed higher, clouds gathered again, dark and foreboding. The first move had been set into motion. And somewhere in the shadows of the fortress, unseen by all but a few, wheels of betrayal had begun to turn. Ravenhold would not survive the day unchanged. But Aldric knew that change could be molded. And in that knowledge lay his greatest weapon. The first light of morning broke through the clouds, streaking the valley with pale gold. Ravenhold appeared calm from a distance, but inside the walls, tension thickened the air like smoke. In the war room, Aldric and Edrin pored over maps spread across a massive oak table. Lines of ink-marked roads, rivers, and settlements. Small tokens represented soldiers, wagons, and fortifications. Every movement mattered. Every decision carried weight. "The southern road is still unguarded," Edrin said, pointing to a narrow pass. If Valenreach sends their riders, they could reach us before the council even knows. Aldric's fingers hovered over the map, tracing the path with precision. Then we set the trap. They will expect brute force, but we offer cunning instead. Outside the council chamber, Lyanna moved swiftly through the corridors, checking the armory, counting guards, and watching for anything unusual. Every glance, every pause told her more than words could. Something was off, and she felt it deep in her bones. The cliffside, the Iron Clans sailed steadily, their ships cutting through the mist. Freya Blacktide stood at the prow of the lead vessel, wind whipping her hair, her eyes scanning the horizon. She had heard rumors of Ravenhold's strength, but her people trusted only steel and strategy. "Keep formation," she shouted.
"No mistakes."
"The Stormborn seeks allies, but we choose our own path." Back in Ravenhold, the first message arrived from the outer scouts, small groups of riders approaching from the south. The council erupted in whispers and hurried steps. Lords argued, commanders shouted, and some merely stared at the maps in disbelief. Aldric remained silent, letting the noise wash over him. He knew fear could be louder than any command, but resolve would outlast both. As the sun climbed higher, clouds gathered again, dark and foreboding. The first move had been set into motion, and somewhere in the shadows of the fortress, unseen by all but a few, wheels of betrayal had begun to turn. Ravenhold would not survive the day unchanged. But Aldric knew that change could be molded, and in that knowledge lay his greatest weapon. Thunder rumbled in the distance as the sky darkened, mirroring the unease settling over Ravenhold. The southern riders approached faster now, their banners visible through the thinning mist, a warning of the power pressing toward the walls and the courtyard. Soldiers readied weapons, shields clanging as they moved. The tension was palpable, every hand steady yet trembling with anticipation. Aldric walked among them quietly, inspecting armor, nodding to those whose eyes showed courage, pausing at those whose fear lingered too openly. Lyanna joined him at the center of the yard, her face sharp, alert. "They've sent scouts ahead. Only a handful, but enough to gauge our strength." Aldric considered the horizon. "Let them see what they expect. Let them believe we fear them." The southern riders dismounted near the outer gates, their commander stepping forward, raising a hand in greeting. "Lord Aldric," he called, voice echoing over the stone walls. "We bring a message from Queen Merwin. She offers terms." Aldric's eyes narrowed. Terms for whom? For the people of Ravenhold, or for herself? The messenger hesitated. "She claims peace is possible if you surrender." Aldric's hand clenched slightly. "Peace at the cost of chains is not peace. Tell your queen that Ravenhold does not bow to fear, only to courage." The messenger bowed quickly, retreating as quietly as he had come. Meanwhile, high above, the Iron Clan's ships cut through the waves, shadows growing larger as they neared the northern coast. Freya Blacktide's voice rose above the roar of the sea. "Prepare for landing. Strike only when the time is ours." Back in Ravenhold, Aldric returned to the battlements. He watched the valley, the riders, the ships, and the rising tension among his own council. Every piece moved as expected. Every piece except one, the one he did not yet see. A single thought settled in his mind, sharper than any blade. Victory would require more than strength. It would require cunning. And cunning required patience. As the storm gathered overhead, Ravenhold waited, poised on the edge of war, unaware of how the next few hours would reshape everything. Night fell over Ravenhold, heavy and silent, but the fortress did not sleep. Torches flickered along the walls, shadows stretching long across stone and timber. The air smelled of rain-soaked earth and anticipation. Aldric remained on the battlements, eyes tracing the distant coastline. The Iron Clan's ships had drawn closer, dark forms cutting through the waves like predatory beasts. Their arrival was imminent, yet he felt no fear, only calculation. Lyanna approached quietly, her footsteps nearly lost in the wind. "The northern gates are ready," she reported. "Men are in position, but some grow restless. They do not know what is coming. Aldric's gaze did not leave the horizon. Let them think they control the night. That is when mistakes are made. Below, in the dungeons, whispers of betrayal had grown louder. Sir Malrek had vanished, leaving chaos in his wake. Some guards questioned their loyalty. Others waited for orders that might never come. The seeds of doubt had been planted on the cliffs. Freya Blacktide signaled to her fleet. The ship slowed, hidden in fog, preparing for the perfect moment. Her warriors tightened their grips on axes and shields, silent but ready. "When we strike as one," she murmured. "No hesitation, no mercy, but honor above all." Back in Ravenhold, Aldric turned to Lyanna. "The Council fears what they do not see. Use that. Spread the word that reinforcements may arrive. Let them worry about shadows, while we control the real threat." She nodded. "And the Iron Clans? They are not the threat tonight," Aldric said, his voice steady. "The real danger is closer than any ship on the horizon, closer than any rider on the road." The storm broke, rain pounding the ramparts, wind whipping the banners. Ravenhold braced itself, not knowing that the first move of many had already begun, and that the fortress's true test was only hours away. Dawn arrived gray and cold, the storm passing but leaving the air heavy with tension. Ravenhold's walls were slick with rain, the banners drooping but stubborn against the wind. Silence reigned, but it was the kind that preceded chaos. Inside the keep, Aldric walked through the halls, passing guards who glanced nervously at one another. The betrayal he had sensed earlier was no longer a shadow. It was real. Sir Malrek's absence had left cracks, and Aldric knew some would try to exploit them. He reached the council chamber, finding Lyanna waiting. Her face was tense, but her eyes burned with resolve. "They've taken positions in the outer yard. A small force, but they test us," she said quietly. Aldric nodded. "Good. Let them test. We will respond not with panic, but with precision." From the battlements, the Iron Clan's fleet emerged from the morning fog. The shapes of their ships became clear, dark silhouettes against the pale sky. Freya Blacktide raised her hand, signaling her warriors. The moment to act was near, but not yet. Below, the council gathered, unaware of the real storm approaching. Lords argued and speculated, some still clinging to the notion of peace, others ready to strike blindly. Aldric let them speak, letting their uncertainty sharpen his advantage. As the first arrows were spotted on the southern road, Aldric finally spoke. "Prepare yourselves. Tonight, Ravenhold will remember that courage rules over fear and cunning over brute strength. The enemy sees only what we allow them to see, and that will be their undoing." Lyanna placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "And the Iron Clans?" Aldric's lips curved into a faint, determined smile. "They will find us ready, and they will learn that Ravenhold bows to none." The fortress seemed to exhale, as if acknowledging the resolve within its walls. Outside, the wind carried the cries of distant riders, the splash of oars in the water, and the faint rumble of what was to come. That quiet before the storm, Aldric understood one truth. Battles could be won with swords, but wars were won with minds, and Ravenhold's mind was sharper than any blade. And somewhere in the shadows, the first move of the game that would define the season had been set into motion.